Do you ever feel overwhelmed with decisions? So many decisions, so many choices, and sometimes you just get so tired by the end of the day that you just can't make a good decision. And this video is for you. Today I'm going to talk to you about decision making. Now, decision making, it's a pretty big concept. I won't lie, it's pretty heavy. I'm slowly digging into it, and what I'm learning so far is that, particularly in the space of how we self-regulate throughout the day, well, self-regulation is underpinned by our ability to make good decisions, okay? And what we know when we think about decision fatigue is that over the course of a day, our ability to make those good decisions, where we weigh up the pros and cons and really think about what we're trying to achieve, to make those good decisions, it gets harder throughout the day, okay? And that really is because we experience fatigue, okay? Because we make, as kind of our decisions compound over the course of a day, we start to fatigue. It's like our decision-making muscle starts to get exhausted. And we make a lot of decisions every day, right? So there's a 2005 TED Talk with psychologist Barry Schwartz, and he, talks about the multitude of decisions that anyone's making every day, and it's everything from what phone to buy, or what pair of jeans to buy, or what to eat, or where to shop, or how to get to school, what should I wear today? And so there's all these choices, all these decisions that we have to make, and now more so than in the past, we've got even more choices because of a philosophy around choice being the sort of driver of our freedom of choice, really, the driver of the human condition and living a good life. And so we've got so many choices, which places a lot of pressure on that decision making kind of muscle. And there was a 2007 study that Cornell University conducted, where they actually demonstrated that just in the space of food, individuals, the participants in that study were making up to 227 decisions about food per day. Like, that's a lot of decisions just about food. And so, yeah, lots and lots of decisions per day, okay? And there was actually a 2011 study that looked into decision fatigue, and there's various studies out there that either support or challenge these particular findings from the 2011 study. But in that study, they looked at 1,000 judges' parole decisions. Okay, so these are judges in a formal law court, where essentially prisoners were seeking parole. Okay, so they're coming up in front of the judging panel and they're seeking parole. Now, in the morning, if you were booked in to see the judging panel, 65% of individuals who approached the judging panel at that time were more likely to get parole. So 65% of the individuals got parole, whereas that declined over the course of the day to 15%. And what that study showed is that these judges that were sitting on this judging panel, were able to weigh up these pros and cons in the morning when they're a little bit fresher, and so were more likely to make a decision that supported parole. But as they experienced this decision fatigue, they were more likely to rely on what we call a heuristic, like a mental shortcut, which was simply to resort to the safest option, which in this case was the status quo, was to not provide parole for these prisoners who were seeking parole. And so that heuristic is something to keep in mind, right? As we get tired throughout the day, we can sometimes rely on a mental shortcut, which is simply to not make perhaps the best decision, but to resort to the safe decision, which is simply, in some cases, the status quo, to not do anything. And so if you're trying to bring about change in any aspect of your life, or your leadership, or your teaching, or your organization, you have to think about where your decision-making capacity is going to be as the day goes on and as that fatigue builds up, and so that you can still make those good decisions that aren't going to be status quo. Because status quo, for any adaptive organization that's constantly evolving and has this commitment to continuous improvement, status quo is not always going to be a desirable option. Okay, in some cases it is, but it really is about making those well-informed decisions to be able to move the organization or to move a person's choices and behaviors forward. So I wanted to share with you guys 3 tips to help you make better decisions and perhaps even mitigate some of this decision fatigue. And so the first thing that you can do is plan in breaks within your day. Now that might sound funny, but that 2011 study demonstrated that actually after a break, there was a slight spike in the judges' ability, not so much ability, but their decisions to grant parole. And so that suggests that perhaps there's less likelihood of resorting to the status quo after a break because you've kind of refreshed your decision-making muscle to some degree, not fully, but to some degree. And so plan in breaks. My second tip is to plan ahead. Now that sounds funny, but if I take those individuals who want to eat better, I see it often, where they'll spend like their Sunday afternoons doing food prep, because they're basically reducing the number of decisions they have to make per day around food by planning it out on a Sunday for the rest of the week. And so they've almost minimized food decisions by planning ahead. And so that's another thing you can do. Tip number 3, particularly with big decisions that come in the afternoon and evening, this is one that I use all the time, is to just hit pause on the decision if you can, and just sit on it for 24 hours. And even if you've got the option to kind of reschedule the decision to the morning, actually put something in your diary to sort of say, hey, make a decision about this when you're a bit fresher, and see where your perspective and your decision changes over that 24-hour period. And so that's my tips. I'll repeat them for you guys. So first tip, take a break. Second tip, plan ahead. And third tip, hit pause if you can. I'm wishing you all the best with your decision-making ventures, and I will talk to you soon.